Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino, here again with another episode of Deep Listens. And today we are getting Chrono Cross for the last time. We are discussing Chrono Cross, the end of Disc 1 and Disc 2. Everything from when you get turned into a Catman, spoilers, to the end of the game. Joining me in this dark task, as always, is Chris ZombiePie Redacted.
I'm actually Gino, that pinguino from the other world where the dinosaurs took over the world and now they're space-traveling, techno-supporting dinosaurs. And I just want to say I'm super positive about the state of the New York Knicks. Mitchell Robinson's going to be a most improved candidate. R.J. Barrett's going to be right there with him. And this new coach Thibodeau, he's going to really get Frankie Smokes back into shape. Frankie's going to have the best knees in the leagues. You could say he's got the bee's knees.
I hated everything about that. Also joining us for this podcast, Jeff Rud. Hello.
Hi, I'm Jeff Rud, and not only am I playing the part of a furry, but I'm also a computer, and also God, and I'm also your dad.
Spoilers.
And you're also a post-credits movie actor.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Oh, but we got a fourth guest. We got another guest here, Gino. We got Gino from the other world where the world is run by dragons. Breaking news. Oh yeah, I'm Gino from the other dragon world. Unlike this Gino, I like meat. I eat nothing but meat. Give me my blood. Give me my marrow. Give me my bones. Blood for the blood gods. I'm done.
Oh, thank goodness. Oh, you're done? There aren't going to be even yet another Gino from another other dimension?
I mean, you tell me, my man.
There won't be. So, before we get started...
Mitchell Robinson's actually going to be good.
He's a good player. He's not going to be good. He's already good. So, housekeeping, as we do every podcast, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can send in your emails there. You can also support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens, and if you do so, you get access to our Discord.
Are you not going to read the YouTube comment from the last episode?
I don't think I am. Why? What was the YouTube comment?
He told us that he wanted us to get rid of the skits, remember?
Yeah, there was someone who said we should get rid of the skits and tell people when the podcast starts talking about the game, what show are you listening to? Like, did you show up here by accident? It's fine.
As Lemmy from Motorhead once said, it's all about the game.
That's
and
true.
how you play it.
Sneaking wrestling content onto this podcast will not be tolerated.
Yeah, you don't want to get me started. I'm salty about that All Japan show from a week ago still. Why'd you put Suwama? Oh, anyway, let's go.
Hey, at least they don't have someone like fucking Evil holding the belt.
Nope. Not
Just
doing this.
Yoshitatsu.
Nope.
Toru Yano is a bitch ass.
Chrono Cross.
Don't make me mute both of you. So, like I said, you can get access to the Discord where you can talk with us about such games as Chrono Cross and other games and other things. I created a fashion channel this week or last week, and there's just a picture of Nick Cage in there. That's it. So you can see all sorts of fun stuff like that if you support the show on Patreon.
A great amount of slander was said about me in the main podcast about my ability to play Among Us.
Yeah, you're bad at it. You can also get in touch with the game nights if you do that. So, are there any bits or are there no bits this podcast?
Give me a minute. Jeff, you go first.
There can be no bits. I'm fine with that. That was a legitimate question.
I'm not drinking anything because I'm not feeling particularly great right now. But I did start a whole gallon of mead.
It's got dirt on it.
I started making mead again. There's mead in my kitchen. It's a whole gallon. It's going to have oranges.
Nice.
Okay. Let me just rub it with my shirt and hope for the best.
I
have a
don't like
shandy.
where this is going at
I have a shandy, and I'm happy about
I've got my
shandy.
headphones on, so you can be talking crap about me at this point. So,
CP, what are you doing?
I'm eating a cactus pear, and I'm just going to bite into it. Because I think that's what you do, right? You just bite into a cactus pear.
Okay,
right?
I want to stop you right now.
What? What's wrong?
Has this been de-spined? Is it like a perfectly
Yes, it's been
smooth-
de-spined.
Okay, because I have a story about this that I won't tell, but
Okay, so I can just bite into it now, right?
you'll be okay. The skin's not great.
What's a cactus pear?
Like a prickly pear cactus.
Oh, it's the fruit.
They're not bad. They
Like-
make a pretty good jam or a syrup.
It's like a pear,
Yeah.
but tart. A bit more firm.
I have a bunch of prickly pear cactus fruit syrup that I put in cocktails sometimes, and it's all right.
All right, tell your story, Jeff. This is a solid 3.5. I think the texture is I would prefer if it were a little bit softer than like more of a consistency of a regular pear. I like the tart factor of this a little bit more than the flavor of a normal pear, but I'm not a big pear guy, so.
I didn't realize you could eat the little nubbins that grow off of a prickly pear.
Yeah, so about that. So I moved around the country several times. We moved to Texas in 1998, and I grew up hunting deer a lot with my father. It's a way that we used to bond as we'd go hunt. Usually wouldn't get anything, but it was kind of an excuse to go walk in nature most of the time. One time we were out. This is like early on in our Texas days, and we're not too bright. And there's a prickly pear cactus we see on this ranch that we're hunting on. We're like, I've heard those fruits are edible. So we go over there, take a knife out, cut one of the fruits off, cut it up, have a couple of pieces. We're like, it's okay. It's all right. You know. And about 10 minutes later, we're like, God, our fucking hands hurt. They are covered in these little spines.
Yes.
They're about the size of like beard stubble, very, very fine. If you don't know what you're doing, or let's say you just moved to Texas and you're like 10 and your dad should know better, and you're just handling those with your bare hands, they will just get all over you. So that sucked for like about a week. Wouldn't recommend doing that.
No,
if you see
these
them in
came
a
from
store,
Walmart.
they've probably been deformed.
Yeah, these came from Walmart.
You know, better your hands than your stomachs or your esophagi.
Oh, yeah. As Gino knows, things that are prickly going down your stomach and your digestive system with ZP.
When did...
Sunflower seeds.
Oh, yes. Never mind. I once had a Dorito go down the wide way, and that was bad. That was a bad time.
Was it as bad as my story?
No, it just hurt for like a good 30, 40 seconds. But I felt like I was going to die for those 30, 40 seconds. But I didn't. And now here I am to talk about Chrono Cross.
This flavor is kind of sticking around in the mouth a little bit longer than what I thought.
Just like Chrono Cross.
Ah.
Got him!
Welcome to our Chrono Cross podcast. When we last left our heroes, our main boy had changed from a boy to a cat man, and then he found himself inside of an impressionist painting,
Mm-hmm.
and then
CP feels sick.
he met a blue mage.
Yes. The only thing I want to say is that, for those that maybe tuned into my stream, I did complain about how the temporal vortex and the way that it was drawn did give me kind of like weird eye issues, and it was actually physically painful to play this part of the game. It's just, again, serious myopia, slight sensitivity to motion sickness with video games, but not like actual physical motion. This was a rough part for the game for me to complete.
Just don't go to the Louvre.
Yes. So you get out of the temporal vortex and you show up just like in the middle of the Hydra Swamp. You get Harl. She joins your team.
She is legit.
And then you have to go on a long, arduous quest to find a way to get your body back.
Correct.
You're Surge, and you don't want to be Lynx anymore. So you go to Viper Manor. You befriend a bunch of new characters because no one who was your friend before will associate with you anymore, despite the fact that it's very clear that original Surge, like your body is being controlled by someone evil. Punished Surge is very clearly not you.
It's worth noting that it seems like some time has like passed in the world.
Yes.
Like the military group from Poor, which is a place that is in Chrono Trigger, has like taken over one of the two worlds that you keep going to. I couldn't tell you which fucking one.
So your home world originally is overrun by Poor. In another world, it's not Zelbes. What's the town? It's not Marbule.
Fort Dragonia? Or
It's not
are you
Golduv.
talking about the tropical
Termina.
place?
Termina.
Termina.
Okay, yeah.
So Termina in Another World originally is a free country, and then when you come back from the temporal rift, it's been taken over by Pore. So both Homeworld and Another World are now under military control following the events of the Linksening.
I will say I think that this game does a decent enough job in regards to like world building and creating this wholeness sense to this, world that we're interacting with until we get to the tail end, which we'll talk about shortly. But
Yeah.
I feel like the locations here, especially the idea of Pore, I feel like there was never a grounding of where's Pore? Where is this invading army coming from? Where was this rivalry before everything kind of started? I feel like that's a pretty big gap here. It's like, were these two warring states? Where did they come from? Is one more technologically advanced than the other? This kind of felt like a weird, like, oh shit, time skip, right?
Where's El Nido relative to the other continents in Chrono Trigger? Because it doesn't exist in Chrono Trigger. Like, Pore, that town in Chrono Trigger is just a tiny little town with like 5 huts. And the idea that it's now a military power capable of occupying a series of island nations seems silly, but whatever. Like, they needed a military force, I guess.
Here's the first time I'll say this episode. That story of how that happened might be a better story than what they did in the game.
Sure. And that's going to come up, like you said.
Like I said, first time I'll say that this episode. So yeah, you can basically, this next chunk of time, you can just go around recruiting people, one of whom is like literally plot essential, and everyone else is like totally cruft.
Yeah, you need Norris, you need Radius. So Radius will join you because he realizes that you're Surge and not Lynx. Norris, who is a Pore military officer, will join your squad too. You get some of the members of the Arcadia Dragoons now, so you can get Zoa, you can get...
Zappa?
Zappa.
Zappa, Go... No, wait, not Go. What's the Asian boy's name? Is that Go or is it Van?
Van. His dad is Go.
Yeah.
Right.
Ho-ho!
Jeff just said the one thing that they're going to constantly bring up. The one thing that I probably will constantly bring up is the idea of the amount of time that each of these characters that you recruit, the amount of time or what entails with those characters, there's a huge delta, right? There's a huge delta in terms of this character is just a real quick one-off conversation and then they join you. This character is going to give you this whole spiel, and then getting their final special ability will be this really involved side quest that has its own bespoke special battles, and they'll even have a cutscene within the game. And this guy I just talked with, and now they're in my party.
There is no rhyme or reason for why some characters show up, why any of them exist at all, why some of them get special treatment, but it's the game that we've got.
Yeah, so someone like Zappa, it's a quick little conversation. He's a depressed blacksmith, and then you get Vaughn, who is this super involved cutscene about how he needs to help his father make ends meet by going on an adventure chasing after his dreams.
Yep.
And here's the thing I'll also do. Either of you play fucking Skyward Sword?
Yes.
The main thing that got leveled, there were many things leveled against Skyward Sword, motion controls, etc. My main problem with it is it like kept on tacking on another set of MacGuffins you needed to get to the fireworks show at the end. I mentioned this because at this point in the game, when it's like, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? I want to be a boy again. Please stop making me be this weird cat man. That's like motivation. Like, it's like, okay, I know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I get that there's like the stakes there. At this point in time in the game, it's like, okay, I'm like dragging this out and these people, it's like, but I know where I'm going. I know where this arrow's going. And it hasn't thrown 37 sets of awful shit to do yet. It's like, okay. So this next whole sequence where you're like interacting on the Zelbes is like goofy and has hijinks in it, but you're still like, okay, but my goal is satisfy these conditions so I can stop being a cat person. You wind up on the Zelbes.
Yeah, you get to a ship. It's Fargo, the pirate man. His alternate version in your home world is a loser. In another world, he's a
proud pirate man.
He's a proud pirate in charge of the SS Invincible. In the home world, he's a sad pirate man who lost a mermaid that he loved, and he named the ship after her, and it's the SS Zelbes. You basically get trapped on the ship because instead of a pirate ship, it's a casino ship, and he keeps people trapped on the ship by getting them into debt and then never letting them leave. Which is a cool concept, and
but
the sequence goes on way too long.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, I got the idea after the 10th minute, and then it kept going.
Yeah, you have to, like, all of the demi-humans that should be in Marbule are all basically indentured servants, or they're enslaved on the ship. So you need to free them, but there's also, like, a shitty magician named Sneff, who also is a terrible
He's
Chinese
a racist
caricature.
caricature, and I feel like I want to mention that. Like,
He's terrible.
he's downright awful.
Like, you have to free him, and then there's also, like, a monster arena on this ship that you can go to, and you have to go to, but you don't have to recruit the monster trainer, Janice, the cat girl, the bunny girl, who can join your squad. You need to host a concert. That's another thing that happens during this sequence, kinda. Like, you meet Nikki and Mickey, the dancer and rocker duo, who in your homeworlds, I guess, are trapped on this ship because of a shitty contract.
I don't think any of us picked Nikki as when we had our three choices, because
No.
I had fake Magus, Gino, you had Pierre, and
I also had
someone
Pierre.
on this podcast was supposed to pick Nikki, but I was just wondering, Gino, do you happen to know what happens if you pick Nikki? Like,
He's not there because everyone who's your homie in your original party won't hang out with you. So that Nikki is the Nikki from the other world, so he doesn't know you. Nothing happens.
I'm of two minds. I really like the earnestness of this scene. I feel like it's one of the few times when this game truly feels emotionally transparent without putting in a bunch of science fiction gobbledygook, like just complete nonsense. And it's a grounded story that's based on the characters, and which is where some of the better storytelling of Chrono Cross can be experienced. At the same time, while, yes, there is the connection that we're getting, like the frozen flame, and this is our step in terms of getting that frozen flame, it feels removed enough from that main path to where I never really felt like what I did on the Zelbez was, like, truly connected. It never felt like an especially earned, lengthy experience, especially when we get to, like, the later part of the game, where it's like, why was this as long as it was versus everything we were going to have to talk about for Disc 2?
Yeah, this section goes on for maybe 2 hours. There are 3 or 4 separate subplots that are going on the Zelbest. You're not allowed to leave.
It's like 5 screens that you're going back and forth through over and over and over. And
but it's
over
like backstory on backstory on backstory
Yeah.
of side character of side character of side character.
And I incidentally like Fargo more than most of the characters in this game, I guess. Like, he was in my party most of the time. Father-son sort of stuff. It's like easy to graft onto. It doesn't necessarily resonate with me personally, but like it's okay. Like, it's all like they spent a lot of time writing backstories for these very specific, like, 3 or 4 characters, and like that's all cool, but it has like fucking nothing to do with
Like,
it has nothing to do with the A plot, me stop B cat, and the B plot, the actual plot of Chrono Cross.
Yes.
Which they don't tell you until like the fucking end of the game.
Sure, and
like,
Gino, we talked about this when I streamed, especially when we got to that concert scene, which we definitely need to talk about soon. But like, that scene has 10 times the production values of 90% of the in-game cutscenes and dialogue sequences.
Sure does.
In Disc 2, where the actual heart of the ending and story, like the actual scaffolding for why Chrono Cross is what it is, like that one kind of what feels like an ancillary moment, not truly connected to the real raison d'etre of the game, has the 10 times the production values of the rest of the game.
Well, they burned all their budget.
This is a Square tradition. Even by this point, you look at the opera scene in like Final Fantasy VI as maybe the earliest like apotheosis of that thing.
The concert scene in 8.
The concert.
Acting scenes in 9. The concert scene in 10. The scene in 10-2. Multiple concert scenes in 10-2. It's kind of it's at this point.
Actually, now that you think about it, Gino, at least give me this. The concert scene in 10-2 is actually grounded deeply with the story of 10-2.
Yeah. It's like all that game has going.
It's all that game has going for it.
Yeah, I would say that this sequence, if this was a different game and it was about the characters and it was about this world in a larger sense, like what's going on in El Nido and the politics there, if that's really what this game was about, this section would be pitch perfect. It's
Yeah.
it's talking about the demi-humans, it's talking about the humans, it's talking about like these musicians and the role of art in this world, politics between these different cities. And you know what? If this was a different game, that'd be great. But it's not that game, and so
Yeah.
I don't care about any of it.
Again, maybe a more interesting game there.
Yes, but it is not that
Okay,
game.
but let's talk about that concert scene because holy
No, no,
shit,
wait,
dog,
so
it's
Before
amazing.
that happens, before you get to the concert, we free ourselves from the Zelbes, and then we go to the Sea of Eden.
Yeah.
All right.
And what happens there?
You find the Masamune, which you might remember from Chrono Trigger as a cool sword made out of two boys.
Yes.
It's like it starts getting into a long-standing Podtoid Jim Sterling podcast extended universe meme of being like, I've recognized that. That's familiar. Wow, I know what that is. That's amazing. Like levels of like, okay, wow, yeah, it's a reference. I understood the reference.
It's funny here because the Masamune in this game is much more the like cursed sword Masamune of lore
Versus the two boys.
versus the one from Chrono Trigger. Like they use the more historical representation of the Masamune rather than the one in the lore in the game, at least until very late in the game.
I don't want to spend too much time on this point, but a YouTube video I watched, I forget the name of it, talking about this game, posited that this is just part of a long pattern in this game of like subverting Chrono Trigger's like, in Chrono Trigger you plant a forest, in Chrono Cross you destroy a forest and destroys a bunch of races. In Chrono Trigger, the sword is really good. In this game, the sword makes a dude kill another dude because it's evil. Like weird inversions that Masato Kato may or may not have been going for. But yeah,
Sure.
It turns out this sword, again, that's a fascinating theory. Turns out this sword's evil and
You pick it up, you kill your best friends, or
yeah.
we get
Home-
two kind of
his-
plot lines, character arcs that are connected with this sword.
Yes.
Yes. So you encounter the sword, and Radius is like, don't go near the sword. We can't get to the Sea of Eden because this sword's here. We can't walk around it either. We need to defeat its evil with the good sword, Einlanzer, which is in the Isle of the Damned. So you have to go to the Isle of the Damned, and then once you go... What?
Is this the one where you have to use the floating things to blow up the little holes?
You have to use Garai's keepsake to get past some
God,
mirrors.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend too much time talking about how the mechanics of these levels suck specifically. Like, we don't need to get to that. But, man, the game's... I understand busy... I've talked about this before, but the busy background work... The levels really do make it way more involved to just go from point A to point B. As Jeff would say, I've pissed straighter lines in the sand.
Yeah, it's... The Isle of the Damned is a pain in the ass to navigate. It's just a pile of bones and purple and red. It's white, purple, and red everywhere, just smeared. And it's hard to see where the hell you're going. But once you get to the end of the Isle of the Damned, you fight the Ghost of Garai, who is a member of the Arcadia Dragoons. He is Dario and Glenn's dad. He was killed by Radius because... Radius was possessed by the Masamune. Yeah, he was possessed by the Masamune and then killed him. And then Garai's ghost is guarding the Einlanzer, and he will fight you so that you can't take it. I guess his death there made the Isle of the Damned all creepy and skeleton-y.
So I'm just going to say it. This is the hardest boss fight in the entire game.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Like, bar none. For a couple specific reasons. He is a big physical damage dude. At this point in the game, like, if you've done your best to, like, equip and sort of build up characters as you can, he's still going to really, really hit you very hard. It took me, like, 4 or 5 tries to get past this boss, and it was the first point where I was, like, challenged, and it was kind of the last one.
He's a white element character, and your best character at this point is probably Lynx, who's a black element, which means you're dealing double damage to him, and he's dealing double damage to you. If he chooses to use one of his good moves against Lynx, he's probably going to one-shot him. So it's an annoying fight for that reason. He's got very hard-hitting attacks, and he's very capable of killing your best character immediately if he wants to.
I did not have that happen. I beat him on my first try. I got very lucky for whatever reason. When I had Starkey in my party, he refused to attack Lynx and instead attacked Starkey, who had resistance to him. Yep. And also Lynx was able to go ham on him and beat him in about 4 or 5 turns. But, as Gino will talk about later, I had a difficulty with a different boss.
That's true. So once you get the Einlanzer, you can go back to the Sea of Eden. Then you can defeat or neutralize the Masamune with the Einlanzer. You get through, and the Sea of Eden reveal what is behind this kind of coral reef covered in clouds, I think is probably the coolest moment in the game.
Sure.
Bar none. It's a frozen sea. Frozen in time, basically. You can walk on the waves, and it's kind of a sub-map unto itself.
Gino.
And there are elements of kind of a futuristic city poking out of the water. What?
Do you want to know what this reminds me of?
What?
Final Fantasy 13.
Okay.
Blue frozen ocean, broken down highway technology city, weird mechanical bosses. This really felt like both the second level of Final Fantasy 13 and the last level of Final Fantasy 13.
Get a little bit of the start of Final Fantasy 10 flavor in there.
A little bit. I just think that the anachronism of going through the Sea of Eden is what does it for me. You're very clearly in a tropical island paradise for much of Chrono Cross, and then all of a sudden you end up in this frozen time portal zone that looks nothing like any of the rest of the game. It behaves in other ways. You're going into these different structures, and they're like ghosts walking around. It's very clearly out of time and place.
I think the juxtaposition may have hit a little harder if they hadn't literally gone to the same well in 8, where it was like, surprise, there's a giant future city.
Yeah, this also felt like F-Star in a lot of ways.
Yes, it does. And as you go through these environments, it becomes clear the area you're in, it's the Eris Dome.
Yeah.
From Chrono Trigger.
That's familiar. I recognize that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You are in a zone that is from 1,000 years in Chrono Trigger's future.
Correct. So this is, I believe, the world that is 1999 before the apocalypse, kind of? Or is it slightly after the apocalypse?
This would be after the apocalypse.
So this would be Luca's world?
No, this is...
No, not Luca's world.
Robo's world.
Robo's world, right?
Yes. This is from Robo's world. And that's why a lot of the mechanical enemies here look like the enemies that you would see.
Which, to be honest, is one of the few times when I feel like, as Jeff said last podcast, when the finger on the monkey paw, that why doesn't this game reference Chrono Trigger enough? This is the one time where I feel like the game did a good job. I felt like, oh, this seems familiar but different enough to where it still feels like a new experience. Exploring this world is kind of interesting. I like how they blended the world's use of both an overworld and kind of structured level design. I actually like that. And the encounters here didn't feel like they were completely a pain in the ass. And I actually thought that this might have been the best designed part of the game from a level design perspective.
Agreed.
And, the fireworks show at the end of it is pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you work your way kind of around these different frozen environments until you work your way to this center structure. Once you get in there, it's kind of this gigantic skyscraper that's poking out of the ocean. Work your way up the building, and you finally get to this room. It says Fate, F-A-T-E.
Right. And this is where it's kind of hard for me to remember, because now that I know the ending of Chrono Cross, it's hard to remember what it was like to interact with this world. I know that this is the first time in which Lavos is verbatim referenced. You go to a couple computer terminals and
yes,
he's just straight up mentioned, or they say the term Lavos and you see pictures of him. And I think there are references to Shala.
There are.
And there's the words fate are said a couple times. But I think that there's nothing other than that truly as explicit as later in Disc 2, I believe, right?
So they say that you meet Miguel here, who was
Correct.
Serge's dad's friend, and he's like, Serge, I can't believe you're all grown up and you're a cat man, but you can't change fate. And he keeps saying fate, and fate is always capitalized. And at this point, you think he's talking about fate, you can't.
And it's just Square Enix capitalizing for the sake of capitalizing something.
Yes, and the later on you go, the more you realize that fate, capital F, fate is and I think he says fate with a capital F a lot of times, and then at one point he says fate, and it's Fate, all capitalized. So there are some hints here that something's going on with the concept of fate, but they don't get very explicit with it.
Boy, yeah, sure. This is also when I realized, oh, fuck, I actually feel like I've spoiled the entire game, which partially true. I know you guys saw me kind of constantly saying, yo, this makes that DS port of Chrono Trigger real weird because, boy, there's a secret dungeon in that game that makes the connection between Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross especially even more explicit than ever before.
Can we park at that a little bit? So I've not played that DS port. Can you give me the Cliff Notes version of what this thing is?
So basically so you have to remember that Shala is a part of the Empire of Zeal, and then there's Queen Zeal, who is the one person who has a relationship with Lavos. She treats Lavos almost like a pet, and there's this mutual relationship. And the Kingdom of Zeal is in the Antiquity timeline, right?
Yeah.
And so there's Balthazar, there's the three wise sages, and they're trying to take power from Lavos so as that they can continue to keep magic alive in the world.
They're basically using Lavos like a power source.
Yeah, basically a power source. One thing leads to another. Lavos says, bitches, basically levels the Kingdom of Zeal. Everyone that's from that Antiquity timeline basically dies. Humanity and the dinosaurs live, which we'll talk about later. Basically, magic dies. This is the reason why that certain characters in Chrono Trigger are able to use magic and then other characters are not. All right, so here's what happens in Chrono Trigger DS. You find out that Shala, in the big catastrophic event that led to Lavos basically destroying the Kingdom of Zeal, she had a pendant that was passed down to Marl, and that Shala is able to transport herself out of the palace before its collapse, which is why her mom is not why the Black Omen didn't really arise originally. However, she ends up transporting herself into the vortex. Shala accidentally is merged with Lavos when Chrono and his company kill Lavos, and they create a creature by merging together called the Dream Devourer, which is the secret final boss of Chrono Trigger DS. It's the unevolved version of the Time Devourer, which we'll talk about later. She and Lavos become bound physically and mentally, and she has a conversation with Magus specifically when you defeat her, and she says, oh no, thank you for freeing me, but this is temporary. This horrible beast shall be defeated by a different company, and then she tells Magus that he can't save her, and basically says, to be continued. You need to find the power of the power of music in order to defeat this beast. And then becomes a monster called the Time Devourer.
They tried to tie it together. Good for them. Good for them trying to tie it all together.
Yep, that's a thing. It's a thing. They did a thing. So Square knows that these two games are supposed to have a connection, but it's weird. I love it. I hate it. It's awful. It's great.
Yep. So after the events at Chronopolis, you defeat Miguel.
Which I actually thought was a hard boss. I thought that Miguel was one of the few bosses that actually does weird shit where he changes your colors to be black so as that his white attacks do double damage.
And
that
he
was
heals
the first
himself
boss
too.
that I think that actually kicked my ass more than the one that Jeff mentioned. I thought that Miguel was the first boss where it's oh shit, this game gets hard.
Yeah, somewhere between these two boss fights, the game is, I think, maybe at its most difficult. And then shortly thereafter, it turns into a cakewalk. We'll get to it.
Bitch. Nope.
You beat Miguel. You also see 3 kids in the Miguel room, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
3 children that are there. And they're like, you're going to destroy the world. You're going to destroy the world that we saved. And it's who are you kids that look like Chrono and Luca and Marl?
It's weird that the game tries to bill it as a bit of a mystery when it is very obvious it is young Chrono and Marl and all of these characters that you already know.
Where do the child ghosts come from? Who knows? Why do they exist? Doesn't matter. Shut up.
So it's here that we learn a little bit about how basically Miguel, Serge, and Serge's
Serge's
father, Serge got poisoned. He tried to find a cure, and he landed on this weird techno island, but that's basically it, right?
Yeah, that's all we know, is that Miguel stayed there, Serge was saved, and Serge's dad left. And Miguel has been kept basically in suspended animation, or he hasn't aged since Serge has left.
Yeah. He also has a weird conversation with you about, like, free will and, like, choosing shit, which is like, yeah, okay, it's a Final Fantasy character talk or whatever. No, that actually is important, too, in a fucked up, dumb way. Anyway, yeah.
And he talks about fate and how he can't defy fate.
Also, it's the bell from the thing from Chrono Trigger, and I was like, I recognize that. That's familiar.
It's Lena's bell.
Yep. You beat him, you move on, and I think there's a giant explosion you have to leave, and you're not able to return to Chronopolis, if I recall correctly.
You do not. The Sky Dragon comes and saves you, and then you fly.
Which is really weird in hindsight to look back on, is this dragon saving you.
So you go... you do a whole bunch of garbage in Termina and Viper Manor to try and figure out what happened to all of the different, I guess in whatever world you're in now, I guess it's another world. Something's going on with Viper Manor. It's been taken over by Poire, so you've got to deal with Grobiak.
I feel like this is the part of the game where it does not tell you explicitly enough about where or what you need to do next.
No, it doesn't.
To wit, this is the payoff of my Skyward Sword reference. This is the point. It's like, okay, so but when do I get to be a boy? And it's like, no, you should really spend some time. This thing's really important in Viper Manor. It's like, I don't fucking care. I want to be a boy. And it's like, you should diddle the fuck around. You have to recruit the weird cyborg. It's dumb.
You don't want to fight evil chef man?
Yeah.
You don't want to fight Grobiak?
So I did all of that. And then on top of this, I did the thing that Gino and Jeff said, yo, this is the one mechanic you shouldn't do. I ended up recruiting all of the summons during this period of time. And
Idiot.
God damn. The
They
summons
suck
in this
and
game
they suck to use.
are terrible.
So it's not only are there summons like Unicorn that only buff your characters and do no damage, it's the fact that you have to color in all three of the circles with the same color before being able to use it.
And for some reason they made it so that you can only summon as many times as you have stars.
Correct.
But by this point in the game you've got 30, so who is this person who's summoning 30 times and never going to an inn once?
But even then... you have to rest if you want to restore those stars, and then also they don't even do that much damage.
Yeah, there's several layers to this being completely inconsequential. They don't do enough damage.
Yeah.
You have way more stars than you need. There's a way to restore the stars. Why would you go to the effort as a developer to build in this constraint that's not really a constraint for a mechanic that no one should use?
Add to this the fact that every time you fight a boss, you get another one of these stars. After that boss fight, the first, generously half a dozen random encounters you get into will give you, a very minor stat buff. And then that trails off, and then all you're getting for fighting is drops for elements that you don't need and money, which you don't need. Because you don't buy really anything except for one spell, which I'll talk about later.
And sometimes weapons.
Sometimes you'll upgrade your weapons, but I have it on a couple authorities that you barely need to do that.
Dude, I felt like the crafting system was even more of a waste of time than getting the summons.
So you should just be running from 90% of the fights in this game unless they're standing right in front of you and you can't get past them.
So I think that it is an appropriate time to talk about how mechanically at this point of the game, I think that all three of us just tolerated it in terms of mechanics, and it was give me the next part of the story. And I think
there's too much.
Kind of exactly what Jeff and Gino have said already. It's like the way that it structures character development and character structure, actually progressing the characters in terms of getting their slots filled in, getting their stat boosts. There's not enough to I'm having a hard time saying this, but it's kind of reminiscent. Again, another connection to Final Fantasy 13. Hard capping your big stat boosts to bosses is a bad idea. Don't do that.
Well,
Because
do
it completely de-incentivizes any form of actual exploring the world and possibly getting into combat encounters.
I would say do it if you want to make all of your combat optional. Like, that's a fine approach. But this game doesn't do that.
No.
Yeah.
It hedges. It both makes the combat mandatory in certain spots, but also doesn't give you great rewards for that mandatory combat. If you make all the combat optional and then say, okay, you're going to get these big stat boosts from the bosses, so we know you're always at least capable of overcoming what you're up against, but where you have this random combat, if you want to do it and get over leveled, that's fine. But this game doesn't let you over level. It doesn't really have an incentive for combat, and the combat's a slog. So it's kind of the worst of all worlds.
Yeah, it's mechanically a slog, and like by the point around this point in the game, you start getting to the point it's like, oh, I have like some level 7 abilities that I've unlocked, and they all just take like 30 fucking seconds
and they
to
don't
run
do much
through.
Damage.
The frame rates drop down to like 6 frames a second, so like it's just like you're swimming through treacle to get through these random encounters. They take like seriously like 3 minutes, 5 minutes to get through what amounts to like trash mobs, and then you get nothing for it. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's maddening.
It's a very disrespectful game.
Yeah. The last thing I want to say, and I know that Jeff kind of brought it up, it's like, well, you know, when you first do every new environment, like you kind of want to do like the first batch of battles, they give you like spells. The problem that I have with that is they were always like level 1 through 3 spells, and I always ended up with like a bunch of fireballs, a bunch of like that weird gravity spell for dark magic, and as the game progressed, it kept giving me these trashy like level 1 through 3 spells, but it didn't give me enough of the higher spells. And then on top of that, it doesn't give you enough of spells that you actually need. For example, Jeff and I don't know if Gino had this problem, but I only ever had 2 revive spells.
Same. I only ever needed 2, but I only had 2.
It would have been better to have more than 2. I mean,
it would have been nice to have the option.
Give me that. And then also, if you do auto and you're not careful, it will always auto-allocate.
It'll stack them both on one person.
On one character, so if that character dies, you're shit out of luck.
Yeah.
Which, like, becomes increasingly rare as you go through this. Yeah, I'll actually go ahead and redact that. I think at a certain point early on in this game, it's helpful to steal stuff. If for no other reason, there's a merchant that will flip elements for things you need to build weapons. But certainly by the time you're Lynx, stop.
Which is another, like, Gino, you talked about how there are these weird mechanics. Like, the steal mechanic is another weird one, right? Like, there are 2 characters who can steal, and for certain parts of the game, that's a really useful ability. And so you always end up having one of the 2 characters that can steal in your party so that you can get the cool shit. And then there's a blue mage in your party, and they're the only one who can do that. And then you have the weird little demon thing that can turn into good guy or bad guy depending on the magic spells you use them. Like, so many weird one-off mechanics.
Ton of it. I ignored, for the most part, almost all of it. So I feel like we can pretty much yada, yada, yada a lot of this stuff. You're doing a bunch of, like, Poré, you fight Orlha for some reason.
Yep. You go back to the Viper Manor. I feel like
you go to Water Dragon Island. Yep. You go to the Hermit's Hideaway a bunch. Kid is rolling with with punished Surge now.
I guess the
brainwashed
thing I kind of talk about is the fact that, again, the delta between the level of involvement the game provides in terms of like character arcs. It's big. Like a character like Orlha gets a multi 5-act dramatic structure. A character like Karsh and Riddell get an interconnected character art that even culminates in a final battle. And then characters like Orcha, Fungi, even Lena, even a character like Lena, talk to a certain character, pick up a thing, and then you're good.
Yeah, there's a lot of nonsense.
There's a lot of nonsense. And I think that, Jeff, you're the one who mentioned it. If this game had a smaller cast and they just cut the chaff, boy, let's talk about dragons, though.
This game has 45 characters, and it also has 6 dragons. So this is the point where Up to this point, I was like, okay, but eventually we're like, surely I've cleared all the fucking hurdles at this point. They're going to put me on a nice clear track. And they kind of do, because it becomes clear. It's like, okay, I need this thing. I need a MacGuffin. To build this MacGuffin, I need to like go to a place. To go to this place, I need the approval of 6 dragons.
Yep.
It's like, okay, well, there's a lot of hurdles, but that's like a rail. I can get on that rail and ride it. Let's go. This process takes so fucking long.
Yep.
This is the worst part of this entire game.
I don't know
forever.
about that.
My joy fucking died, except for
I
the
don't know
music.
about that. I
This
have
is
a
a
lot of things
disaster.
to say about the last couple of dungeons, but I hear you. I think the one that I think is especially heinous is the green dragon and needing to go to like the fucking Hydra marshes and then hitching a ride on a dragonfly, then piloting the dragonfly into this one-off environment.
You didn't like Gaia's navel?
You have to get into like 30 random encounters with trash mobs that have attacks that take forever with shitty status effects.
So that part I think was unforgivable. The fact that there is an actual screen where it's not going to trigger the next part of the story until you kill everything on the screen. Like there's no tell, there's no hint that is the way that you do it. There's no other part of the game that functions like that.
You say one screen, it's actually 3.
Yes,
and
you're right.
monsters move between those screens, so you actually need to like wander back and forth several times to be like, did I miss that? Okay, I need to go back. And then that one I got, okay, well that one was on the first screen, but now he's on the third screen, so I need to make sure.
And it's all looping.
It's so fucking bad.
But you do get the cave girl, because there needs to be an Isla call out in this game.
That's familiar. That's one dragon down.
Yeah, you need to kill 6 dragons. So there's the sky dragon, it needs to go like water dragon, fire dragon, green dragon, black dragon. When you want to kill the black dragon, that's where we get the concert scene that we've talked about with the incredible production values.
Yeah.
Then you fight there's the earth dragon, and once you've killed all the other dragons, you can kill
Oh
the sky
god, the
dragon.
earth dragon where you had to put it into the weird holes in order to cause the geyser to pop up, but you had to be facing the correct direction in order to push the thing into the thing.
Boy, those weren't fun.
That was really finicky. And they're all spread out. Like that's the other thing that I forgot to mention is like you have to. They're all spread out. Your boat sucks. It's so goddamn slow.
Not only are they spread out physically, they are spread between the 2 worlds. Like half of the dragons are in one world, half of them are in the other.
Yeah.
Oh, remember the fire dragon? You actually had to go into the fire thing and then had to refreeze the lava.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like, there's nothing about this dragon part that's even redeemable.
And to top it all off, they're not even that fucking interesting to fight. Like, they have like a color-coded weakness at this point in the game. If you've like leveled at all, which you kind of necessarily level by killing the bosses on the way
if
here.
If you got here, you leveled.
Yeah. They're like, they have they're like have named moves that take 30 seconds for them to execute, and then they do like 12 damage, and it's like, oh, okay, he's gonna do this again. All right, I'm glad I have a book. Okay, he's done. Okay, I can finally.
They don't really add anything to the story. Like, it's not like every dragon is this wizened sage that clues you into another part of what's going to happen next in the story. It's like, you are the fated ones of destiny. Let us fight.
Yeah. To top it all off, as we'll come to talk about, at the very end of this game, there's a very specific mechanic you have to engage with that involves colors in a sequence. Now, this may have been an interesting opportunity to say, like, precede that a little bit. Like, oh, you got to fight, let's say, the yellow dragon first for some reason, I don't know, and, like, get used to this real specific pattern. But they don't even do that. Like, it just seems like this thoughtless, needless, thankless.
Well, you can actually fight them in
waste of
any
time.
order that you want.
Exactly.
I know, that's the thing. Jeff is saying, wouldn't it have been interesting if there was an order to it? And then maybe in other sections where you had to do one of each element, there was an order, and it just kept repeating over and over and over again.
So it's less like
hope you remember that one room.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that.
Yeah. This is a horrible part of this game.
You kill all the dragons.
Yeah.
You go to the dragon tier, or you get the dragon tier. I forget if the dragon tier was a location or
it's a thing. It's an object. You go to the dragon shrine. You can get the dragon tier in Guldove.
Stina joins your party.
Yes. You get these dragon tier, then you need to go... Oh, man. It feels like you should be going to get your body back, but I think... Oh, yeah, you do get your body back.
You do get your body back. We got to
Yes.
talk about that cutscene, Gino.
Right, so you go to the Dragon Shrine.
Dragonia.
You go to Fort Dragonia in your home world, and in your home world,
Shit, this scene.
Punished Surge has beaten up everyone. So if you want to get draggy, the easy way to do it is to go to Fort Dragonia at this point, because Surge will have solved all of the puzzles. Because if you don't do it, then you have to solve all the puzzles, and then you can get draggy.
Yeah, that's the way I did it, and I feel like a dum-dum.
Yeah, so if Surge takes care of it for you, it's real nice. You can get draggy, you fight Punished Surge. Once you do that, you go to the room.
Oh, boy.
Where your body was stolen from you, and now you're going to get it back.
I was not prepared for this cutscene. Is everyone else still shook?
Yeah, Lynx
I
gets
was not
covered
ready
in,
to see a man get bored by a blob of blue goo and then rebirth. I wasn't ready for Surge Butt.
Yeah, Lynx gets covered in, blue ooze. Because, the crystal, I guess, had goo in it. I don't know. And then Surge is a baby inside of the crystal.
In 2001, the story.
He grows up to be a real boy, and then the crystal breaks and he's birthed out of it. It's unclear. None of this stuff is explained. It's not clear why any of this happens.
It might take the fifth position of craziest things that happen in this game. It might be the fifth, but there are...
Yes.
We haven't reached the tip of the iceberg.
No. The thing that we stopped on because it was so crazy, where your Surge becomes Lynx, that is, by this point, it's a trifle. Like going to an impressionist painting world? Yeah, sure. Why not? Sure. Now we've been rebirthed from inside of some sort of techno crystal. Yeah. Why not? Everyone just kind of rolls with it. Surge is back. He gets clothed somehow. And then all of your squad members who were acting like they didn't know you when you were Lynx rejoin your party.
With no pomp or circumstance, they're just there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, at this point, and actually it's on the way to go fight the Black Dragon, it turns out, who is on Marbule, the place where all the demi-humans congregate. You go back there after this concert restores everyone and all the demi-humans are happy and yay. And there's a merchant who's there, who wasn't there before. And I was like, that's interesting. What are you selling? And he's selling a bunch of trap elements, which are all miserable. Fuck them. Then he's got two spells that he's also selling for what is a very modest amount of money at this point in the game. One's called Diminish. The other's called Magnify. Diminish, the spell description just says, decreases all magic damage by 50%, and it targets everyone in your party. And I was like, that's pretty great. I'm a get a couple of those. Diminish is a win button. Diminish is maybe the most broken thing I've encountered in a game this year, and I'm playing Ace Combat 5, a game where you can have a plane with 100 missiles on it. It's ridiculous. Diminish actually breaks this game for me. From this point forward, I had zero problems with this game, mechanically.
Yeah, so Diminish, why don't you explain what it does
to
fights? What happens once you cast it?
So I had some lingering questions, because it's one of those, some of the spells that you get, say it's that'll describe itself as a level 4 plus or minus 3. Mechanically, what that means is on this weird spell grid you have, you could put it in level 4, or you can move it up or down 3 slots and it will become more or less powerful based on where you put it. And Diminish is a level 6 plus or minus 2 or some shit. And I was like, I wonder what that actually means. Because if it's it cuts it in half, if I put it up in 8, does it just cut all damage? What does that do? So I looked online, and Diminish, it turns out, is actually kind of broken. Most of the status things in this game wear off over time. Diminish doesn't. Diminish, so check this out. Every fight, you start off, you hit someone till you get to level 6, you cast Diminish on everyone at one time. It just sticks. Every magic attack that you face for the rest of that fight does half damage. And then you just cast Magnify on someone or Strengthen on someone. And then they just beat the shit out of every enemy till they die. And that's Chrono Cross.
Yep.
Every single fight from this point becomes exactly the same. There's no challenge. There's really no threat of death as long as you stay kind of healed, do a couple little buffs. So it's a win button. Just buy literally 3 of them, give one to every member of your party, and just cast Diminish, and then you're done. It's literally
yes.
You never need
correct.
to cast magic again.
I'll always say I did not piece that together until the last boss. And there are still a couple of bosses that are more physically attack-minded, which means you just need to be more careful about how you beat them.
And, the jellyfish boss is not susceptible to physical attacks.
And
it's like,
it
oh
needs
no,
a
I have
very
to cast
specific magic spell. Yeah,
and then I guess the last boss fight, you need to cast some spells. We'll get there.
This is also the part of the game where I feel like you really do separate the wheat from the chaff in terms of your party members. Like at this point, there were party members who I just did not touch at all. I didn't even think about putting them in or slotting them in.
Yeah, I mean, by this point in the game, I think I've used 6 characters on the reg. I have 30 of them in this hopper that I look at and be like, that's a nice portrait. I'm never touching that again or ever. It's a nice portrait. The priorities here are real fucking weird. But anyway, here's Surge's ass. Now you're a boy again.
And especially when you get to that late game point of no return, like in a Final Fantasy game where you actually do want to explore the world one more time, collect these things, level up your characters, do a couple of last quests. When I got to the point of no return in this game, it's like, fucking sign me up. Let's go. Because I am done getting these level 7 techs. I am done getting these magical abilities. I don't want to trap any more goddamn summons. Whatever characters that aren't in my party, I feel that there's not enough an incentive for me to actually go out of my way to do those steps. It's weird, right?
It's just so much that's so needless.
Let's talk about Dario.
Well,
so I didn't get Glenn, so actually I didn't get this part of the game at all.
I didn't get Glenn, but I did this part of the story.
You can do it. So once you get your body back, and I think you can start this before you get your body back. If you go to, there's a little island in the home world that has puffs of smoke coming off of it.
Yep.
There's no indication on the map that you can actually go there, but Chrono Cross kind of has a few locations that if you just know that it's a real spot you can go to, you just click on it when you're on the map and you'll go to this secret location. And if you go to this secret location, there's this island where you can find a little hut where someone is taking care of Dario, who is supposed to be a dead dragoon, Glenn's brother, but it turns out he's alive.
And Riddell's soon-to-be husband.
Yeah, Riddell's fiancé, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Fiancé or husband, it depends, I guess, which world you're in. You have to get Riddell, you have to do some sequencing to... I forget, you need to get the Masamune for him or the Einlancer.
So, no. He has the Masamune. You have to defeat him to pick it up. And you talked about how you thought Diminish was the most broken thing in the game. I thought that the Masamune was the most broken part of the game because at this point, Surge was doing 300 plus damage for every hit.
Yeah, so if you decide to do this and defeat Dario, you will get the Masamune, and it will become the Master Mune, because you will purge it of its evil, murderous desires, and then it will fuse with Surge's weapon to become, the ultimate weapon in this game. So it's a painstaking side quest, it's got a pretty good payoff, and it fills in the gaps of what happened to Dario in one of the two worlds, which, paying off the storyline of one character in one of 2 alternate dimensions just is so low stakes, even if it's a character whose name is supposed to be really consequential.
And remember, before this, you could also do, Karsh's little character arc, where you find out this, heart-wrenching, but not even that storyline about how he wanted to marry Riddell, but then, oh gosh darn it, Dario was the first to actually get the courage to propose to Riddell. And he has to support his friends, even though he is heartbroken.
Yeah, and Karsh defeats Dario because he gets possessed by the Masamune. There's a bunch of stuff that, again, it is one version of one of these characters in a game about multiple dimensions.
Yeah.
I just cannot care about any of
and
these
people.
people.
All this interpersonal stuff about these dragoons and stuff, it's maybe that'd be an interesting game to go explore, these characters and their conflict.
Game. And, when you do this, you get a lot of more cutscenes involving, or not cutscenes, but dialogue scenes involving Masa and Mune. And, I kind of been thinking about this. Of the list of characters from Chrono Trigger that I think maybe should be in this game, Masa and Mune are not even in my top 20.
Yeah, but it's a cool sword, and cool swords get to come back in sequels. So at this point, if you've done the side quest, You then get the ability to go to the Sea of Eden again. In the other world, the world that still has the Sea of Eden.
Gino, I have to ask one thing. Did you get turnip?
No, I did not.
Damn it. I didn't get turnip either because I forgot to plant the seed in the first part of the game.
It was just too arduous for a character who's terrible.
Yes, that's what I heard.
So
you made Mojoy, though. I know that.
I did make Mojoy. So at this point, you get the ability to go to the Sea of Eden again in the other world. The world that didn't have the Sea of Eden get wiped away. You go in, and you get prompted for a disc change. This is the beginning of Disc 2. It turns out, in this version of the Sea of Eden, instead of there being a frozen future city, there are 3 islands where you have to fight the gods of fate, like Clothos and Clothis and all those 3, for some reason. Who the hell knows why. And then you jump ahead. Like, you teleport to this area called Chronopolis, which is similar to the kind of frozen Ares Dome situation.
Oh, boy.
It's also time-related, but in this place, you end up seeing a bunch of ghosts that are talking about some sort of time manipulation project that they're working on, and they seem to be frozen in time in this era.
So there's 2 things that you find out. There's 2 things that are referenced by these... Actually, 3 things that are referenced by these ghosts. There's the Counter Time Experiment, there's Project Kid, and there's the Records of Fate. All 3 of
what
these
are the Records of Fate? Tell me about that.
One of you try to explain what happened here.
Early on in this game, and let's, I guess, work from smallest preposterous thing to largest. Early in this game, someone literally in games here's a save point. I'm gonna tell you about it. The save points are called Records of Fate, and we use them to put our memories in, and it's great. And you're like, huh, that's a weird Ludo narrative way of explaining a save point. Okay, save points are, if I've got this correctly, nodes of a supercomputer called Fate, which are manipulating the emotions and memories of the people who use them to control their actions as they go through the world.
No, it's even darker than that. It's even darker than that. The lore of the land, basically, whatever it is, you are insisted that every citizen must visit one regularly, so basically at least once a day, and once you make that contact, the Record of Fate causes a neural rewrite of your mind. So, when the dimensions split, the Records of Fate in the home world stop working. They're not designed to function across another dimension. So, once we talk about this, the Records of Fate actually become silent, and all of these people have all of their emotions take over their bodies. And if we want to get even crazier, I looked it up, these Records of Fate actually play into one of the alternate endings. Lynx merges with Fate and then creates a giant Records of Fate monster. It's crazy.
Yeah, so turns out everyone's getting their memories manipulated by a supercomputer. Turns out that there was a future city that was experimenting with time travel.
But why was this
Chrono.
future city trying to experiment with time travel?
Because they knew about Lavos, and they wanted to prevent...
And what's making their life really difficult, Gino? The dinosaurs from an alternate dimension.
Well, we don't know about that yet.
Okay, wait. So let's talk about the Counter Time Project, or a Counter Time Experiment.
Yeah, so they want to figure out time travel, but they're not Chrono and his squad, so they are doing it through science instead of a teleportation device mishap. They figure out time travel.
Is it here or later when you find out that the Time Lord is actually Balthazar from Chrono Trigger?
We don't find that out yet.
Not quite.
Okay.
What you do find out is the entire El Nido archipelago was literally cobbled together by some human time-traveling individual.
Yes.
As a weird repository of all of this shit.
It was an empty archipelago that was
populated by dragons.
Well, no. It was populated by the people who lived in Chronopolis. They created the islands, and then they went out and had kids. And, all of the people that live there are descendants of the original people from Chronopolis. And they are manipulating all of these people as well.
When did Dinopolis merge with the Keystone Dimension?
That comes later.
We're not quite there yet.
Okay, sure.
So they have like, all of these people that you've met are all descendants of the folks who worked in Chronopolis? At least that's what it seems to be.
How did the people get to Chronopolis? They're people who got flung into the future.
They got flung to the past
Yeah,
when
The
the
past
experiment
that
happened.
became the future? Because eventually, don't they say that Chronopolis exists in, like, 2400 AD?
The Chronopolis from 2400 AD gets pulled into the past.
Okay.
It gets pulled into this time period. And then Chronopolis, using its future technology, seeds.
So, wait.
And then there are multiple dimensions.
Is the counter-time experiment their attempt to go back to where they came from, or is the counter-time experiment, like, a part of Project Kid?
It's a part of Project Kid. My understanding is that they were just doing the counter-time experiment.
No,
and
wait,
then
you're
their
right.
city
The counter-time
jumped back in
experiment, they were
past.
trying to use the frozen flame
Yes.
and the technology of Chronopolis to restore the Ocean Palace, to go back to the Ocean Palace and prevent the Ocean Palace incident that
Yes.
separated Shala from Lavos, right? They wanted to
Something
keep
like
Shala
that.
away from Lavos and prevent the Ocean Palace incident. That's the counter-time experiment, right?
Something like that.
And then Project
This is all
Kid
garbage.
something that's different, that's related to the fate computer and the records of fate. So the fate computer is created after, when, like, the counter time experiment doesn't really work.
I mean,
It's-
like,
sure.
but, so, and like, rather than try to explain all this shit, I'll make it even worse, because then you go to a door, after a series of dungeon related bullshit, you touch a door says, "Oh, hey there, Chrono Trigger, nice to see you," and you're like, "Wait, what the A? Ooh, that's familiar. B, wait, what?"
But also, that's not what that word means.
Yeah, you enter this door, and there's the frozen flame. There's Kid on the floor.
And the Frozen Flame is a supercomputer.
The frozen flame is part of a supercomputer. Then Lynx shows up, the cat, talks about Kid cryptically, and then is like, "By the way, I'm not really a demi-human or a person. I'm actually just part of Fate. Not Fate the concept, but Fate the computer. I'm actually just a computer. Now I'm going to turn into a giant robot
Wait, you're
lady and kill
forgetting,
you."
Jeff, you're forgetting the part. Okay, we don't know the specifics of Project Kid, but Luca installed Robo as the Prometheus
right.
circuit
Yeah.
into the fucking fake computer. She killed Robo, turned him into a fucking computer chip, and put him into the fake computer to prevent the fake computer from ruining everybody's lives and being a homicidal computer maniac.
Yes.
She needed to give the fake computer a soul and killed Robo in order to do that.
And Surge, because of the incident where his dad and him showed up at Chronopolis that fateful day,
Yes.
he is the only person who can enter this room to fight the computer because of a glitch
Yeah.
from like
There-
a lightning strike or some
There was
bullshit.
a time storm when the things moved through time
But
that we've
later-
talked about here, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's not.
And-
It's not. We're not ready to talk about what created the storm or why that disturbed, like what caused the storm to disturb the fake computer. But a storm happens. It
And it knocked
temporarily
out-
suspends
Yeah.
fate,
Their
which
firewall
gave-
went down.
which gave the space dinosaurs the opportunity to send in the Terra Tower, which we then use.
But
Oh boy!
But while the firewall was down, this was around the time that Surge incidentally got attacked by a cat, and his
Yep.
dad and his friend were
Yep.
like, "Let's just
Yep.
sail this kid
Yep.
somewhere."
Yep.
And they accidentally found this place, and they accidentally were like, "Let's rub this on him. It looks good," and because it's just here, I guess. And
Remind me, Gino,
because of
when did we
that,
find
Surge
about?
is immune to fate.
Yes, he's immune to fate.
He's the
He can't
only
be
being
impacted.
in the universe with free will.
But no, Jeff, that's not entirely true.
Oh,
People
okay.
of Chronopolis had free will because they were citizens of the time of antiquity.
Nope, we can't. Enough.
When do
Enough.
we find out about the space dinosaurs, Gino?
Dear
we're
listener.
2 dungeons away.
Dear listener, I cannot emphasize this enough to you. Everything we've said is a thing that happens in Chrono Cross.
Yeah. This
We are
second disc.
We are not even explaining all that happens in this section. All of these things that we have said are things that are said in Chrono Cross, are not exhaustive, and are largely invalidated by future revelations.
Yeah.
These revelations take forever. They are conflicting with my idea of how reality functions. Just completely improbable. And the game just says it matter-of-factly, bullet after bullet after bullet.
Well,
And
the weird part is a lot of this you actually have to talk to a random ghost called like the chief, and he actually gives you this long diatribe about like what he's thinking about, like, oh, you know, Chronopolis, it's from the past into the future, we blah blah blah, Keystone Dimension, or blah 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 blah. Like, you have to find this random
nouns.
ghost to even know any of this.
Yes. So all of this stuff is madness. You fight fate, you defeat fate, and when you defeat fate, the dragons that up until now seem like they were pretty chill are like, you idiot, fate was on the side of humanity. We dragons hate humans, but we've been kept down by the computer.
Sure.
So now we're going to fuse together to become the divine dragon god.
This
All
is where we
dragons,
find out what Harley truly was.
Yes, Harl, it turns out, was the legendary 7th dragon. The
Also,
7th element.
We're running past this. I think that Fate is the best model I've ever seen in a PlayStation 1 game.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
she looks amazing. It's like a big, like, future computer lady.
It reminds me a lot of, like, Final Fantasy X, but, like, almost 10 years prior.
Yeah, like, it's Matrix. It's like a really solid-looking PS1 model. The textures look nice. It's very little warping. Like, it's impressive. It's technically impressive for a game that's largely, like, matte paintings and shit, which are pretty in their own way. But, like, as a model, it's good.
The problem is like every single magical attack it does takes fucking forever.
Yeah, we're really in that now. From this point forward, it's all downhill.
So you go, at this point, the dragons, all 6 dragons, like, start attacking each other, and then they fuse together into the divine dragon god, which is a giant monster.
Terra Tower?
They summon Terra Tower, which is a flying... It turns out that Sky Dragon Island was actually a submerged ancient city that can fly.
No, it's a city that was sent to this dimension from the dinosaurs.
I'm just saying that...
From Dinopolis, which is a dimension that existed separately from where we're at. It's as if Lagos didn't land on the planet.
We have to save some of the powder.
I wasn't going to get to Dinopolis yet, because up until now, all we know is it was Sky Dragon Island, and then it's flying. We don't know about what it is yet.
Right. Now we actually lead to, after killing Fate, we actually lead to what I think, unequivocally, and I mean this totally unironically, is the best part of the game, which is Lucca's orphanage.
You leave the island, you leave the Sea of Eden. You can get the Chrono Cross at this point. It's an element, it turns out.
Yeah.
Totally useless.
Except when it's the most useful.
Also, if I understand, you could just miss it.
The Chrono Cross? Yeah, you can.
You could just not do that.
Yep, and the location where you need to get the Chrono Cross is hidden. It's hidden on the map, and you never need to go there.
It's marked, at least, when you go there.
It is, I guess, later in the game.
Yeah. Anyway.
The Hermit's Hideaway, where you go to Lucca's house, that is also optional. What happens if you go there? Because I actually didn't, because I ignored everything involving Kid.
You just learn a couple of things about Kid. Kid just kind of interacts with certain little parts of the environment where she talks about, man, yeah, this reminds me of so-and-so. It's just like extra scenes of Kid being nostalgic, which we should mention. This is suddenly the part of the game where Kid becomes like the second most important character in the game.
Yeah.
This rando that was just there once now suddenly becomes the crux of the story.
Just in case Project Kid wasn't a giveaway.
I mean, that's too, but like, if Kid was the crux of the story, why do we spend like 80 to 70% of the game with she's not there? We don't see her.
Unclear. So yeah, you can find out that Kid was actually an orphan who grew up in an orphanage that Lucca from Chrono Trigger started. But then Lucca is murdered by Lynx. He burns down the orphanage, and Kid survives, and that is why she hates Lynx.
Like I said, like we could nitpick like how you have to like interact with different parts of the environment and get all the kids as being annoying, but that last that tail end of the story where you actually like drag her out of the burning orphanage and she's just weeping uncontrollably and you have to like console her. That to me is like the ultimate like Jeff point of, if this was how the game started and this was the rest of the game,
or this was what the game cared about.
If this was the crux of the story, like we were, like, you want to be weird and like super Square Enixy, like we're time cops trying to prevent the people that like, we gotta like Sarah Connor this shit and we gotta raise Kid to be the hero that we need, but then we also need to find like all of the tragic backstory to her. Fine. Give me that. I thought that scene at the end.
It's good.
It's really good. Yeah. And it shows that there, like I said, there's an emotional honesty and earnestness with how this story is told. Why is this not the game?
Also, 2 things in this fucking orphanage worth noting. 1, Kid canonically met Chrono and all of your friends from the first game because there's drawings of them. 2, Kid's level 7 is in here, completely hidden in a place that is not marked, and you unlock it by doing a random button sequence that's not referenced anywhere.
Yeah, that and it's also the fact that she interacts with Luca and there's all this weird stuff. Kind of blows an anachronism with all of the times where, like, Kid doesn't recognize Chrono or the ghosts. Kind of like,
yep.
What? Excuse me?
I mean, it's not like they explain where the hell the ghosts even come from,
and then
so who cares?
There's, like, the Luca lady had a letter from Luca. So Lucia had a letter from Luca that's like the most important letter that she has, but she didn't give it to Kid right from the get-go. Oh, boy. Terror Tower!
You don't have to do any of this.
You have to do the orphanage.
I didn't.
You don't need to do the orphanage?
No, you don't.
I think you do. I think you need to get an item there. You have to, like...
I didn't encounter Kid after I went to Chronopolis. I did not.
Well, no, you don't
join my party,
need to
but
have
I did not go
Kids to
do
this scene.
flashback.
But I thought that like someone pulls you into a time portal.
There's no key item or anything or story advancing thing that happens here. The only thing you get is Kid's level 7 attack.
Okay. Well, so this just leaves us. You have to go to the Divine Dragon Falls if you need to pick up the Chrono Cross.
Yep, and then you need to find a way to
like Riddell in order to do that. I forget.
Yes. Not Riddell. You need Actually, at this point,
Stena.
You already have Stina. You have to get her, and you'll have the 2 halves of. You'll have the dragon tear fragment from both worlds.
Oh God!
And they fuse together to make the Chrono Cross.
Oh God.
You need to find a way to get to the flying
Now
dragon.
we got to the part where suddenly Starkey becomes the 3rd most important character in the game.
Yeah, so you need to find a way to fly up to Terra Tower, and in order to do that, one of your characters who's mandatory is a spaceman, and he's got a spaceship that has crashed in the El Nido Triangle. And so you have to go down to the El Nido Triangle, fight a jellyfish that's immune to all physical damage and only takes damage from fire element, and then get the engine from his ship, because apparently Starkey's ship only fits 1, and so he instead...
Despite the fact that it seems very big inside.
You're literally all in there.
He takes the ship's engine, then we go back to Chronopolis. We jack some tech from Chronopolis.
Which doesn't make any sense. How did we get back to Chronopolis? Oh,
Thank God they didn't make you walk there. I guess I'll say that.
And then they install a flight engine and some future tech onto your boat, and your boat, your fucking sailboat, flies up into the sky.
Because it's got an anti-gravity engine, right?
Yeah, whatever. You fly up to Terra Tower. Then you need to run through Terra Tower, which...
this level sucks.
It sucks. It's very big. You fight a bunch of bosses that... There's 1 per element, and each of them will say, humans fucked with fire, and now I'm gonna fuck you. And then it's like, here, I'm water, and you polluted the ocean with your soda can rings. Now I'm gonna choke you to death. And you fight each of them, and they all say how humans have wrecked the planet, and humans are the disease.
Worth noting, these are also not in the order of the thing either.
Yes, I thought they would be, but they're not.
Yeah.
So the most important room in this entire thing, most of this section, there's almost no exposition except when the bosses tell you that humanity deserves to die.
Yeah.
The most important room in this entire section is a room with blinking elemental crystals, because they blink in a very specific sequence and emit a song.
Yep.
And that is the only hint that this game gives you about how to properly beat the final boss. This is where you would learn the sequence to beat the final boss. If you do not pay attention to this room that is completely forgettable, that is not highlighted in any way, you will get the bad ending. So you keep fighting your way up Terror Tower. You eventually make your way to the top, at which point you fight the Dragon God, which
is labeled as the Time Devourer.
Yes, which is weird. And when you fight the Time Devourer / Dragon God...
This is when you find out about Dinopolis.
Yeah, I think it's on the way there. Like, all of a sudden you're
in... No, it's the statue man at the bottom, remember? There's this statue man, you fall to the bottom of the thing, and then there's like this random statue who's like, I'm an ancient human being who was at war with the dinosaurs. Let me weave you a tale.
Oh, yeah. This is where the still comes in.
So this is where you see the craziest still image. Like, of all the times in which they could have used their production values to make a thing, clearly they ran out of money because concert, gonna give you a full FMV kind of style concert, movie scene. Here, you're going to look at a still image with, like, Star Fox on the SNES, like, spaceship shooting the Terra Tower.
You suddenly end up in Viper Manor, and you meet Balthazar again and the ghosts of the Chrono Trigger cast, and they tell you, okay, so here's what's up. Chronopolis was pulled from a future where humanity was dominant. This Terra Tower is actually Dinopolis, a dinosaur city pulled from an alternate reality.
No.
For those of you who have played Final Fantasy VII Remake, I am doing the panting lady face right now because this is so good.
Jeff, I got this. It's going to be
I
quick,
know.
I promise.
Just tell me.
Terra Tower comes from an alternate dimension in which Lavos didn't land on the planet because it turns out that Lavos gave humanity the power to destroy the dinos.
Yes. Humanity are the children of Lavos.
The Dinids. During Ayala's timeline, in the ancient timeline, post the antiquity timeline with the Kingdom of Zeal, Lavos, and you with Chrono helping Ayala to defeat the dinos. But that didn't happen in an alternate timeline in which Lavos doesn't land. The dinos in this dimension find out that you exterminated their people in this timeline, so they send the Terra Tower. I guess they kind of make like a blood pact with the dragons. They don't. The dragons?
I don't think that Terra Tower was like a plan from the dinos. The cosmic forces at play pulled Dinopolis into this world as a counter.
Chronopolis
both
or
of them.
Dinopolis?
It pulled
both. You're right. Dinopolis does also come. It's pulled as well.
It's pulled to offset the power of Chronopolis. So Dinopolis
No. Actually, it's Dinopolis is shifted into the Keystone dimension to counter Chronopolis' introduction into the past.
The planet pulls Dinopolis back because the dinosaurs are agents of the planet, whereas the Time Devourer pulls back Chronopolis because it is an agent of the children of Lavos.
And then to try and
then
counteract
they go to war.
That, the humans of Chronopolis create the Fate computer to kind of completely manage the planet.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we end up with a battle between Chronopolis and Dinopolis, these two future cities with future tech, and we see a still image of fucking fighter jets, laser fighter jets, fighting against a giant flying organic tower.
Full of dinos. Again, the loudest
dinosaurs.
I can possibly say this, as loud as my lungs will take it. Imagine if that was the game. Just imagine if that was what you got to play.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Like fucking
future
imagine.
dinosaurs and dragons becomes irrelevant when you compare to the final battle, right?
Yeah. So Dinopolis, we learned about. We learned that these two intermingled cities from the future, from different futures and different realities, have been pulled back. And the dinosaurs were defeated by Chronopolis, and Chronopolis split the Dragon God into 7 dragons, to weaken the power of nature. so that humans could reign.
But wait, there's the plane of existence where it's just the dragons, remember?
Yes?
Yes.
Right.
So El Nido originally just had the dragons.
There's so much bullshit. So you fight the dragon, you beat the dragon. And after you beat the dragon, you are told, hey, that wasn't actually what needs to be done here. We need to fight the Time Devourer. We need to fight Lavos again, because it's a Chrono game. So you need to go back where it all began, and you need to take the Chrono Cross. And when you do that, you go to Alpasa Beach in your home world.
Oh, boy. Let's talk about the conversations you got. So there's Luca, Chrono, Marl.
And a purple spot in the ground.
Yeah.
And to be incredibly clear, you don't need to have any of these conversations.
Any of these
you can just walk up to the button.
But I did, and goddamn, I want to talk about this.
Future daughter clone baby daughter clone.
Baby daughter clone. We got to get this trending
computer, dad, furry.
Luca reveals to you that Shala, Princess of Zeal from Chrono Trigger, who gets eaten by Lavos, has fused with Lavos to become the Time Devourer.
Yep.
And it's lying in wait in an alternate dimension where it will eventually mature and destroy all of time and existence. But you have this one opportunity to defeat it, either through violence or by soothing the savage beast with the power of funk. But she also tells you,
why don't we learn a little bit about the previous attempts to try and free Shala, like Project Kid,
which was going to separate Shala. But instead, Shala created a baby daughter clone named Kid, who she sent out into the world, this baby daughter clone, to find Surge.
Kyle Reese.
Why is she finding Surge, you ask? Well, because Shala, despite existing in an alternate universe, fused to a monster, heard the cry of a single child.
And then created the electrical storm.
Who was bitten by a panther. This one child getting attacked by one creature in all of existence, because she exists outside of time and space. That one baby crying caused her to awaken her humanity and set into motion the events of this game. She sends Kid, this baby daughter clone, to aid Surge. Surge's cry causes Shala to down the defenses in Chronopolis, which allows Surge and his dad to get into Chronopolis, which causes Surge to become the only person with free will in this entire fucking game. It causes all of the events that happen just because the incredibly improbable explanation that Shala heard the cry of a single human child, and that awakened her humanity and allowed everything from there. So we learned about the baby daughter clone. Kid is actually a clone baby.
Then isn't it the Chrono reveals that they don't exist, that they're the ghost children? So, like, we've created a timeline in which Chrono, Marl, and Luca don't exist?
We created a timeline where if you don't do something, all of the work that they did to defeat Lavos won't matter, because this new creature will destroy all of the timelines. So they're saying you need to fix this. You need to make sure that all the hard work we did doesn't get undone. We also learn that Lynx is actually Surge's dad.
Right.
When Surge, leaves after he's healed in Chronopolis, Fate hacks the mind of Surge's dad, slowly corrupting him and deleting his free will as he interacts with records of Fate, until he eventually becomes a blank slate on which the machine can imprint its will, manipulates the father, Wazuki, I think is his name?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It manipulates him and turns him into a Panther Man, because Surge's greatest fear when he encountered the supercomputer was the panther that poisoned him. And
remember, he becomes the Panther Man because it's what he fears, right? But then Balthazar made his own Neo-Epoch and traveled back to 1020 in order to direct Surge and fix Project Kid.
Yep.
So he started in 2300 after the time crash, which sent Chronopolis into the past, okay? But he gets stranded in 2300. And then from the future, Balthazar like I said, does the Neo Epoch, so is that he can travel back in the past, and then basically he's been directing Surge to find Kid. And then Kid needs to merge with Shala to form the one being, and then they can truly be the person that they need to be.
Pretty much. So we learned Surge's dad was imprinted by the supercomputer, mind is taken over, his body was changed, and then from then on he was a blank slate being manipulated by the computer. I forget what Marl's revelations are.
No. Marl's fate...
Is it just Shala, like you need to help Shala?
No. It's the Kingdom of Guardia. You find a little bit about like what happens with the Kingdom of Guardia. The Kingdom of Guardia basically collapses, I think. Yeah, basically. I mean,
hers are less fucked up than Baby Daughter Clone.
Baby Daughter Clone, and also your dad was a fucking furry.
Yeah, your dad being slowly driven mad and turned.
No, that's right. So you find out with Marl that Guardia is invaded by the armies of Por, becomes destroyed. I'm looking at my screen caps, and it was ruled by the King of Guardia, the 33rd, and then he was succeeded by Chrono, who married
Marl.
Chrono ended up betraying Marl and married a princess named Nadia.
But she's Nadia.
Yeah, sure.
Marl is Nadia. Nadia is that her real name.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. So then you need to fight the Time Devourer. It's Lavos again.
The Time Devourer or the Dream Devourer?
Who cares? You fight it.
Who cares?
You fight the Lavos creature.
Crab monster that's got Shala, which I feel like I need to point out. This is not what Shala looks like in Chrono Trigger.
This was driving my wife insane when I was like, oh yeah, like, cause she's like, what the fuck? And I was like, okay, so this game is actually answering a question, what happened to this tertiary character from Chrono Trigger, and it's nuts. And she looked up like, who the fuck is Shaw? I don't know who that is. Oh, okay, that's dumb. And then like, you get to this fight and she's like, that's not even this person. It doesn't even.
Yeah,
look
Shala
like
also
her.
like the Shala that's trapped in the Devourer is like a child, and Shala in Chrono Trigger is like an adult woman. She's like the queen of the Kingdom of Zeal.
She's got purple hair. She's wearing pink clothes.
And like,
and
whatever, a wizard did it, but it's like
this gets back to the point of like, so I guess the most important character from Chrono Trigger, according to Chrono Cross, is this tertiary character who dies, but then didn't die.
So this is, I think, Gino, did I say this on this podcast, or was this when we were talking earlier? Retronauts recently did a show about Chrono Cross a little while ago. I think I've talked about this. And they kind of hit on this point, because apparently when Chrono Trigger came out, there was some portion of the people who played that who were literally calling the Nintendo hotline about this. Because like, there's a bunch of side shit you can do. Then there's the Shala character who's like kind of unresolved, like what happens to her. Yeah. And that man at the end of time just kind of like alludes to like, yep, there's other people who may need your help even after you've done kind of everything. So people were like calling or like writing Square and being like, what happens to Shala? Like, how did I get to this thing? How do I figure out what to do with Shala? And like the Nintendo hotline people would have to be like, yeah, there's nothing there, dude. Like, it's not in the game. So there was some like non-zero number of people who actually cared about this question that we're now learning is like what this game has all been about. What happened to fucking Poochie? Because that's what this game is about, is what happened to Poochie.
Yeah.
In this case, Shala. And it's insane.
And
at this point, you've probably played this game for like generously 30 hours. This is the thing.
I just
like,
want to point out, like, there are
towards.
Characters from what happened to, like, what about like, Janice or Dalton or fucking Frog? Like, those are the characters from Chrono Trigger that maybe should make an appearance. I don't know.
Even beyond that, like, I understand that everything you did in this game, like, ultimately was pointing you to, like, this point. But when you try to frame them, it's like, oh, yeah, well, she's this queen from this future past city that was floating, and then she got stuck in the thing. It's like, okay, so why did I have to spend, like, 5 hours getting people off a boat?
Sure, I mean, like that's the, like, existential question, right?
Like what? Like,
this was the whole point of the game.
Like,
why?
Maybe scaffold this a little bit better than the last 10 minutes of the game.
5 minutes.
The last 5. It's insane.
This leads me to
It's the most bonkers thing.
This leads me to my personal theory, which is I think that the creators of Chrono Cross only played the first half of Chrono Trigger, because when you stop and think about it, what are the big things that end up playing a huge role in the end of the game? Dinosaurs, okay, so that's Ayala's level, which is like the first half of the game. Shala, one of the first levels in the game, you go to Antiquity, and
Shala's pretty
Marl
late.
and Chrono. Most of it is like the very surface level of Chrono Trigger, right? Like there's no idea of like 1999, that's when the apocalypse happens.
No, they have the apocalypse, and they have the Aristom. Like, they reference a bunch of stuff from Chrono Trigger. The problem with it is that they latch onto a question that I guess some people had, but I certainly didn't. And they introduce so many more outlandish concepts to the canon of Chrono Trigger that have nothing to do with answering that. Like, there's alternate dimensions, there's alternate futures, they have cloning, they have all of these different, they have the nature of free will, they have demi-humans, which were not a thing in Chrono Trigger. Like, all of these different concepts that they've decided to add. El Nido, this location doesn't exist. They add so many different, just completely bananas elements that do not tie to the main.
Star Trek Enterprise thing. It's like, this is ultimately a question that the answer is not interesting enough to justify any of this.
Yes.
It's like, so why spend literally, like, Star Trek Enterprise is a disaster. Like, all this time being like, oh yeah, this is how we came up with the idea of, like, how these ships work. It's like, oh, that's fascinating, I guess. Like, for a very specific kind of person.
Are you about to talk about the answer as to why the cranial ridges on the Klingons look different in season, like the original series versus TNG? Because I thought that answer was really creative.
But
who cares?
I'm not litigating this anyway. And then
we need to beat the boss.
So here's the nuts thing about this boss fight.
Right, we forgot about the boss fight.
Not only so, as I've touched on, because I realized this in stream of this conversation, there's like a very real chance you didn't even build the thing, this Chrono Cross. There's also a non-zero chance that even if you did build it, if you've been like auto-equipping all of your elements, which there's really no reason not to, that A, you may not have it equipped, and B, you may not actually have yourself set up such that you can do the thing.
Yep.
You need to not only have paid attention, you need to have like really keyed yourself to do this thing that the game basically has not told you to do.
They tell you that you need to beat this thing with music and not violence, but there's only one room in one dungeon that tells you what the sequence is and how, like, the attacks tie into sound. So it turns out when you have the Chrono Cross equipped, every element you cast is associated with a musical note. In order to defeat the Time Devourer properly, you must play a very specific song, which is played by using earth element, then fire, so I guess it's yellow, then red, then green, then blue, then black, then white, and then Chrono Cross. So you need to do those 6 elements followed by the Chrono Cross. But your enemy uses elements too. So the Time Devourer, if you don't do it properly, will interrupt your chain, potentially. So the way to do this, if you want to do it right, is you need to get every single one of your characters to at least 3 stamina, or at least level 3 in terms of spells. Then you need to have them all defend so that the Time Devourer takes an action. From then on, you need to go yellow, red, green, blue, black, white, all level 1 spells, ideally.
Because they take less time in the weird timeline that this game uses.
Yes, you need to make sure that they have enough juice left so that they can use a second spell without charging up in any way, because any time spent attacking is time when the Time Devourer can take an action and fuck up everything. Thankfully, you can run away from this fight, so if something goes wrong, you don't need to go till the end. But once you actually accomplish this, I think as long as you put in the first 6 correctly, it'll just jump you to the person who has the Chrono Cross. You don't have to worry about getting interrupted from then on. If you execute this properly, you play this song, and then Shala is set free. If you don't do that, you kill it, and I guess the future is doomed. But after the battle, we get a final cutscene where Kid and Shala have been fused into one girl, and she's in modern-day Japan.
No. We get the lecture. We get the oration.
Yeah.
Forgetting
right.
about the oration, the big speech.
How could I
What
forget
is
about
the
him?
lesson we need to learn about free will, Gino?
We get to
And
learn about
panspermia.
spermatozoa and eggs and
So I guess
insemination.
Chrono Cross was actually about sex?
It's
Yeah, it says that-
amazing. It's the most pompous fucking thing.
So I guess I'll shoot first. So Shala, it's safe to imply that Shala merges with Kid and they become a
Yes.
person, right? Like that's not some sort of fan theory that I'm applying to this, right?
Yeah, the baby daughter clone fuses with the mommy Lavos mom.
Okay, so she delivers this speech to try and teach us one wizened lesson before. Well, she basically says, "Okay, you've saved the world. Congratulations. We all have free will. Yada yada yada. Oh, by the way, you're all gonna lose your memories of what happened and what you've done, and you're just gonna go on your separate ways. Have fun with that. We're gonna Sakura,
But
this."
she also says that every person in the universe has the potential to be the person who will inseminate the planet to become a new phase of life.
Yeah.
And then she's like,
Yep.
but wait, doesn't that mean that only one person gets to fuck the planet to bring about the next phase of existence? Well, it turns out every existence builds on each other, so we're all just taking one step closer to wingmanning that one person to fucking the planet. And I cannot, again, emphasize enough that they use the term impregnate the planet.
Yeah.
Spermatozoa.
Spermatozoa impregnate the planet. Like I'm not like goofing here about what the phraseology is of this game.
She also talks a lot about how we will meet again and it will be a long struggle and a task. It's like, bitch, you know Surge lives in 1020 AD. You know. And also, why aren't you referencing your damn brother Magus that
'Cause who cares?
spent his entire life trying to find her and is like his whole life's purpose is trying to reunite with the sister that he knows and loves from the bottom of his heart? I mean, what about that part? And then she signs the ending journal entry as Shala in quotation Ked Zeal. Why?
So, here are some quotes.
Who?
Here's some quotes. The eggs that we call planets and the innumerable spermatozoa which gather around these that we call life forms, when one of those countless seeds inseminates a planet, a new universe is born.
Wait. Here's the thing that I also realized. Remember, no, Shala gives her pendant to Kid, right?
But wait,
But
ZP.
wait, no.
I'm not done yet. But if only one person gets to fuck the planet, wouldn't that mean that we're all meaningless? No, says the game. That is not the case. Each and every one of us has a chance of becoming that one chosen life form which inseminates a planet. Yes, it could be you. I'm verbatim. You in quotes.
Not fuck. Thank you very much. This was T for teen. So she gives the pendant to Kid.
Yes.
Okay? But doesn't she give the pendant to Marl in Chrono Trigger
She
as
does.
a way of like the guardian heirloom that allows Marl to be a part of Lavos?
It's the MacGuffin that starts the whole thing.
But that conflicts with the timeline in Chrono Trigger.
Shut up.
And then what about the
Shut up.
part of the game where Harl looks almost exactly like Kid when you look up in her face? And then
Yep.
she has the same fortune given to her by the fortune teller of Termina?
Yep.
That nothing happens.
Nope, they don't. Nope. Shut up. This game doesn't care about it. At this point, we jump to the end of the game.
Oh, God. So
and
I thought it
Kid-
was done. I thought it was good. Gino saw my real reaction of this. I thought, oh, God, thank God the game's
Yeah,
over.
it
Hey,
jumps-
here's this highlight reel. Wait, what
Yep.
are these weird scenes that are not the highlights of the game?
Why are there these live action scenes? And it turns out that Kid and Shala, the fused Shal Kid, is in modern day Japan looking for Chrono.
But from a literal
Or
level,
Surge.
they filmed a fucking movie that only plays for generously a minute and a half during the credits of their video game. You even see the production company that they hired to make a movie for this one-off character who only factors in the story for like what? The last hour? They
If
made
that.
a movie for that character.
Yep.
I
This is maybe the most opulent game that I've played in a good long time.
So I actually, this was something we talked about too early, Gino. I looked this up. So this was Square in the very fucking throes of the slop. Square benefited more than literally any other publisher from the existence of the PlayStation. They made millions of fucking dollars. Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within took 4 years to produce, which means they were like halfway through the production of that thing. In Hawaii, go back and listen to the episode where we talked about it, just burning fucking money. So yeah, you know what? Go ahead, shoot a literally 5-minute sequence, well produced, that we're gonna put into like a 60 by 40 window in the back end of a 40-hour RPG about a character that is mentioned like 6 times in the game. That's fine. Yeah, it's cool. Can you light the cigar? I've got a couple like 10,000 yen notes you could use. It's cool. Just go for it. Like just the amount of time and money lavished on this shit is like wild to imagine. Like this will never happen again.
Yes. This game is bananas. Final question to talk about Chrono Cross. ZP.
Yeah.
And Jeff, both of you have played Final Fantasy VIII. I believe you've both played Final Fantasy 13. We've played a lot of games in similar veins. We've played Nier Automata. We've played a lot of games with just bonkers out there. Stories, explanations, deliveries. Does anything compare to Chrono Cross? Would you say any of the games that the Deep Listens podcast has covered compares on the banana scale to Chrono Cross? Because I think Chrono Cross might be the most bananas game we've ever played for this show.
Are you saying that it's a solid candidate to take the Platypus Award?
It's
I'm
different
saying
from
that-
a platypus, I think.
It is very improbable that this game would ever have existed at all, or especially in the way that it actually exists. That is certainly true. But I'm just thinking, like, when people talk about Final Fantasy VIII and say that, oh, that game's really, wow, Squall is dead, or, oh, that whole stuff with Ultimecia at the end. Ultimecia, like, Disc 4, when time compression happens, it's a whole disc. Like, they change the location. They explain who Ultimecia is over the course of 3 discs leading up to that. Chrono Cross, in 5 minutes, completely upends your understanding of everything. It would be like if in Final Fantasy VIII, like the Ultimecia is Renoa theory that goes on online, if they said, no, that shit's real, and they just say it right at the end, and then they do no scaffolding of it. Or, like, if instead it's like, nah, it turns out Ultimecia was your mom, dog. And then it's just end credits. That's Chrono Cross. Like, it does that, but it doesn't just, like, do that. It does it, like, 4 times in the last 5 minutes.
As the resident person who still thinks, like, Nier Automata is, like, okay, it has problems, but I enjoy it. It's juvenile in ways, but it's all right. I know it's not that popular here.
It's fine.
Yoko Taro tells weird story. His ideas are unconventional in some ways. I'm not saying they're great, not saying it always sticks the landing, but they're like kind of weird visions of like fantasy worlds that he's come up with.
So what you're saying, Jeff, is you and me are going to play Drakengard?
I mean, don't put that evil on me. So I like Dynasty Warrior, but so like, yeah, like Nier Automata, it's got kind of a crazy story. Drakengard 3, it's got kind of a crazy story. But they're kind of their own weird internal worlds that are like literally related. They're all related to Drakengard, it turns out, except for Drakengard 2.
Don't get me started.
Yep. There's like a weird internal logic to all those that kind of goes along and tells its own weird sort of chunks of story. This, again, not only answers a question that like barely needed answering, it spends 40 hours doing it over 2 discs with 45 characters, most of whom, like, the amount of
like,
shit that is completely unnecessary.
How many of the characters that we interacted with actually help answer the driving question of this game?
Yeah. A question
Chrono?
which isn't even really
Or not
posited
Chrono.
until
Surge
kind of
and
the
Kid.
last minutes. Yeah. For that alone, it's nuts.
They parachute in 3 characters. They do not explain where they came from to just give exposition on things that the game could not be bothered to cover during its actual runtime.
Yeah, through
They have 3 inexplicable ghosts that are there to tell you things that the game could not fit into a narrative structure that makes any damn sense.
But look what they did get in.
Yeah.
You get aliens. You get a turnip.
Dragon baby.
Get a talking dog.
Got Mojoy.
You get a dragon. You get your dad is a furry, is a computer, is God. You get dimensional time traveling dinosaurs fighting jets in the future. You get and none of that shit happens on screen. They just tell you about. They spend all this time telling you about other more interesting
the dramatic
shit.
moments like Luca's death.
Like
I still think that there are 2 dragons. We don't need to slay them anytime soon because I think we still got time. There are still 2 JRPG dragons that I think are bigger than Chrono Cross. Possibly 3, but I don't want to play Xenogears.
Yeah.
I'm not playing 3 fucking games that are 100+ hours long. But I would still rank Star Ocean 3 Till the End of Time and Eternal Sonata as those games still out-trump Chrono Cross. And I played...
But neither of those games have been played on this podcast. This game is
Eternal
the most
Sonata,
bonkers thing we've ever played.
Yeah, I played Eternal Sonata and holy shit. Holy shit, man.
We'll play that someday.
How about we put that as the next Giant Bomb Community Endurance Run? I'll put that down as the torture game for the loser to pick, or the winner to pick.
I have a more germane question, perhaps, about Chrono Cross.
Go right ahead.
Does it belong on the list of Final Fantasy things?
Oh, fuck.
No. That list is pure. You keep that away from the list.
Well,
Would Chrono
let's
Trigger
do the
belong
ranking
on
of Chronos.
No.
All right. Yeah.
Chrono Cross versus Chrono Trigger.
For now, Chrono Cross is the best game on the Chrono list.
No, we played Chrono Trigger for the podcast too. Chrono Trigger
I
is
wasn't
the
there.
best. Fair enough.
I wasn't there either, so I veto this. 2/3 vote vetoes Gino.
Chrono Cross is the best
Filibuster.
Chrono game.
Filibuster. Gino, let's play Radical Dreamers.
Let's not.
Please.
No.
Gino, thanks
Thank
for giving.
you.
I want to say I've been carrying this game around since high school, along with Final Fantasy 8 and 9. I had 7, but someone stole it. And thanks to doing this show, I have now gotten through basically 3 of those 4 millstones in my back catalog. So all I've got left is 9. That's like
You haven't played 9 yet?
no. So I've started 9 like half a dozen times. I
You
beat
know
the
what?
first
That
disc in
should be
high school.
Jeff's new recurring segment whenever he records a podcast is
My
Jeff,
backlog.
how
millstones.
much have you played Final Fantasy IX? Where are you at now?
It's just me yelling at you. So have you finished it yet? It's the best one.
One thing at a time. Now that I've got this off my plate, can
Yep.
put on. I've literally made a rule. I'm not playing 2 JRPGs at the same time anymore because then I don't finish anything.
So yeah, this has been Chrono Cross. We've done it. We've played it. So you don't have to. Please don't play it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Final fun note. The Sony PlayStation Store website has over the course of between these 2 episodes
right.
officially gutted itself. Frankly, as far as I'm concerned, you used to be able to quite easily go on there, create a wish list, and you could just track when things were on sale. They got rid of that wish list, and they've gotten rid of the ability to buy PS3, PSP, and PS Vita games through that store. So it used to be quite easy to just digitally buy a copy of this game for like $6 or $10, one of the two, on the store.playstation.com. Now you need to physically get up on a Vita or a PS3 and navigate those stores, both of which are bad to do. So it's still available. You can still buy it. It's just a little crappier now if you are interested.
You know
Except they
what?
can just tell you everything.
I'm going to take a step further. Do an HD remaster of Chrono Cross, you cowards. Do it. Why not?
What do you have to lose?
You ported Chrono Trigger to 18 billion things. It would not behoove me if my Samsung smart fridge could play Chrono Trigger.
Port the bad game because you ported the good game.
No. Port
Cowards.
Chrono Cross to the goddamn modern technology. If you can do a cheap port of Final Fantasy VIII, that's not even good. You can do Chrono Cross.
Re-release
They're
that Chrono Trigger manga.
They're doing all of those fucking Saga games, right, Jeff? They're doing all of those.
2 and 3 got re-released. That is true.
Those got re-released. They did all of those Secret of Mana games. Those got re-released. Bring Chrono Cross to modern technology. Get it trending.
We'll see. Well, thank you for joining us on this journey. We will be back. This has displaced the Final Fantasy coverage.
Time to play Final Fantasy 13. Get fucked.
We'll be back with Final Fantasy 13 2 next.
Say
I was
it
able
again.
to dodge it for a few months.
Say its name, Gino, and say it proud.
Playing Final Fantasy 13 2 for the next Final Fantasy coverage.
You sound like
Thank you.
Grow up.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ZP.
We get to be a time cop again.
Thank you, listeners. If you want to support the show, you can do so. Patreon.com/deeplistens. You can also get in touch with the show at deeplistenspod on Twitter, deeplistens.com.